All right, first and foremost, can everybody see the screen? All right, fantastic. So the topic and the title of this is how to ensure you have the right people in the right seats. Obviously, being an EOS implementer, I'm going to focus primarily on some EOS tools to help with that, but hopefully give enough practical experience with this also that it's applicable to your situation. As I like to do, maybe. Uh-oh. There we go. With any meeting, I believe all great meetings start with clear objectives and agenda. So running through our objectives very quickly, I hope to get you to think a little differently about your people, or at least think of people, kind of reaffirm and re-emphasize the importance that you already have in terms of how you focus on your people. So that's number one. I'm going to give you some practical tools you can start using as early as this afternoon. I challenge you to take some action. So anytime we're talking about people, hopefully there's a takeaway and there's an action item that comes with it as well. And then finally, any questions that you have, I'm going to try and tackle those. With regard to the agenda, I'm going to do a very quick overview about EOS and a little background on myself, dive into the model itself, there are the 6 key components to that, and then we'll pause briefly there just to take any questions you may have about the model. We'll jump into the people component, so we're doing the deep dive there and doing exercise with that. Again, we'll wrap that up with some Q&A and be done. A little about EOS and myself. EOS, as you probably know at this point, stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And I like to say it is a comprehensive, simple, and proven system. So taking those one at a time. Comprehensive, the gentleman who put together EOS, named Gino Wickman, wrote the book Traction, if you're familiar with that. Basically, in working with lots of different organizations, the thousands of issues that we run into as leaders, as entrepreneurs, really boiled them down to these 6 fundamental key components that we're going to talk about. So it's comprehensive in that it looks at all parts of the business so that you're running great entrepreneurial businesses. And these 6 key components are really the focus of that. It is simple in that a lot of what we're going to talk about today are really basic, simple, timeless principles. There's probably nothing I'm going to talk about that you haven't heard from Jim Collins or Peter Drucker or Patrick Lencioni. They're simple tools and disciplines, but they're not easy. So I like to use sometimes, personal training or workouts. A squat is a pretty simple exercise. Anyone who's done a squat knows they're not easy. And that's kind of what's going on here, but they're very effective. And then proven in that Gino's been doing this for over 20 years. There are 700 plus implementers out there in the world right now, working with over 20,000 companies really to test and refine the tools. So they are proven tools. EOS as a system focuses on 3 areas, which we call vision, traction, and healthy. Vision, as the name suggests, is all about getting your people 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. Traction is really the focus of this, is to make your team and your organization more accountable, more disciplined in the day-to-day in terms of how you're going to reach that vision. And healthy talks about team cohesion, functioning really well as a leadership team and then as the rest of the organization. A little bit about my background. I've had a wide variety of entrepreneurial experiences throughout my career. Co-founder of an internet startup, partner of a failed home remodeling company, most recently the president of a large family business. And through those experiences, I have hit the wall. I know what it's like to hit the ceiling and feel stuck, to know that you can do better, but just not be sure how and what and how to get there. Also felt, that pull and the tension as you're starting to grow and you're trying to scale and want to do so responsibly. So I've been there. I've been in a lot of different seats. I know how you feel with regard to knowing that there can be more. And my role as an implementer is really that of a teacher, facilitator, and coach. So I teach the tools, but more so in our sessions, really my job is to facilitate you and your leadership team to come to great answers for the greater good of the organization. and to coach you and push you to become your best as a leadership team. So very quickly about the EOS model at a high level, I mentioned there are going to be 6 components I'm going to go through very quickly. The journey as an implementer, the journey that I work with leadership teams to go, is to help you become 100% strong. That's the ideal objective, is 100% strong in all 6 of the components. Now, 100% is ideal. We're always growing and improving. So really the goal is about 80% plus in those 6. And the sad fact is most of the organizations that we work with start somewhere in about the 20% range with a lot of their components. If anyone is interested, please let me know and I will send you a link to do an organizational checkup. It's a quick and easy assessment for the 6 components that kind of give you an idea of where you stand currently. So as with any great model, we're going to start by focusing on you. If you would, I should have prefaced you, if you have a piece of paper and a pen, we are going to do some exercises today. So the very first thing I'd like you to think about with regard to your business is just think about the 3 to 5 issues or challenges you're currently facing, and just jot those down. We're going to come back to them later, but think about, again, some of the issues that you're currently facing. Excellent. All right, so keep thinking about those and writing those down. I'll keep moving through the presentation here. And like I said, we'll come back to those in just a minute. When we start the EOS model, the center of the wheel, as we call it, the 6 components, really focuses on your business and getting your business to be 100% strong at the end of the journey. The very first component is the vision component. And we like to say every great organization needs a clear and compelling vision. And in addition to that, you need some way to really capture that vision so that it's clear and can be conveyed to everyone. We use a tool called the Vision Traction Organizer. You can find one of those online also at the EOS website. But it deals with 8 primary questions, things like your core values, your core focus, your target, and your goals for the next quarter. With each one of these components, there's typically a tool and a discipline or a mindset that has to go with it. So the discipline here is that this really needs to be shared by everyone in the organization. To the degree that you can get everyone rowing in the same direction, as we'd say, that's when you're really going to make progress toward that vision. 100% strong means everybody in the organization is clear on those questions and really lives that vision day in and day out. The next component is the people component. You've probably heard the terms right people in right seats. This is what we're going to focus on primarily today. Having your people 100% in the right seat, right people in the right seat is the goal. That's 100% strong. And as any of you know, a vision without great people is not going to be achieved. So it requires that you have the right people in the right seats to really accomplish that vision. So the next component is the data component. This really means moving us from egos, feelings, subjective hunches as to how we're managing and running the business and getting us to a measurable scorecard with some really meaningful metrics on it, and ultimately getting everyone a number that they can point to show how they're progressing, how they're succeeding, how they contribute to the greater success of the organization. When you've got a great scorecard and everybody's got their number, that's 100% strong in that data component. The issues component is the next one. And again, this is kind of twofold in that first and foremost, it's a mentality and a commitment by the leadership team to really smoke out all of the issues that you have. You really want to focus and make sure people are being proactive with identifying and bringing issues, and we're getting those on a list so that you can deal with, as opposed to just ignoring them or constantly being reactive. Then we teach something we call the issue solving track. We had the initials for it, IDS, and it's about identifying, discussing, and solving issues so that they're done and you're not continually discussing them week in and week out. Again, when everybody in the organization is bringing issues to the table and each group has the ability to solve those issues once and for all, you're 100% strong in that component. Process component, as Tanya kind of referenced, working on that, is really about capturing the core processes of the organization. So there are about 10 core processes you likely have, and it's capturing at a very high level. It's documenting this, as we'd say, in an entrepreneurial way, capturing the 20% that leads to 80% of the steps in the process. By documenting these, we're making sure people are doing things the right way and the best way each and every time. This is really going to help with scalability and consistency. And the discipline that follows with that is making sure that it's followed by all, so that we're training everyone who touches one of these processes in the right way to do these consistently. Again, when that's done, we're 100% strong in the process component. The last one's traction. There's no coincidence that vision's at the top, traction's at the bottom. What we like to say is vision without traction is just hallucination. And traction really is, again, about instilling that accountability and a discipline day to day so that you're working toward that vision. The way we do that is break that down into what we call quarterly rocks, creating this 90-day world where you can really focus hard for 90 days, come up, make sure you're still on the right path and keep going. And by instituting a really strong meeting pulse, which, as Tanya referenced earlier, starts with kind of the core of that is the weekly leadership L10 meeting. So as everybody has rocks and each group has the right meeting pulse for their group, you're 100% strong in that component. That is the EOS model at a very high level. Each one of these components has a tool and some disciplines, a mindset that goes with it that really helps you across the board to make sure you're clear in terms of where you're going and how you're going to get there consistently. Any questions with the model? No, that was a very quick run through. Anybody have anything they want to ask about it? All right. So my question for you is, look at those, I'll go back here a slide, look at those issues or challenges that you wrote down. And as you look at these 6 key components, see if you can peg one of those issues and challenges into one of these components. My hypothesis is that each one of those challenges ties directly to, at its root level, ties directly to one of these 6 components. All right, out of curiosity, how many of those issues were people related to some degree? Did you have something on there that was people related? All right, so that's where we're going to do our deep dive into the people component. And it is the number one factor of the components. It's typically the number one area in which most of the issues occur. We see about 82%. 80+% of the issues that we track and see when working with clients are related at its root issue to people. And as somebody has once probably joked, and you've heard, I would love business if it weren't for all the people. Right? I love what I do if the people wouldn't continually get in the way. Most of the fires and issues that we deal with is really about people management, leading people. So this people component becomes the number one factor. What we're going to work on today, I'm going to do things slightly out of order than how we would work through it if we were doing a full implementation of the session, just so we can get to this tool. So the 4 steps we're going to cover is we're going to talk about defining the right seats, then talk about what right people look like, what the great people for your organization are. Then obviously we've got to put the right people in the right seats, and we're going to confirm and validate that they truly are in the right seat. The exercise that we're going to do is hopefully very practical in nature and something that you're going to be able to use this afternoon if you choose to. It presumes a couple things first. So I'm sort of forcing this in a hypothetical sense, and I'm presuming that I have the right structure. So I'm going to talk about structure, but in order for this exercise to be meaningful and for you to really use it this afternoon, it presumes that your organization currently has the right structure. I'm not going to take time to go into that. That's quite an effort to do that. So we won't do that today. But if you have questions in the future, I can answer those. It also presumes that you have discovered your true core values. So many of you probably have been with organizations or heard of other organizations that, post things on the wall. And those are great words to be posted on the wall, but that's not what it's really like to live and work within the organization. So there's also an exercise we do to help you discover your true core values. In order for this exercise for us to work today, we're going to presume that the structure is largely the right structure and your core values are truly the ones that you live and use, live and breathe day to day. So again, if you haven't done those, you'll get the idea of the exercise that we're doing, but going back and making sure you've got the structure and the core values in place is going to be essential. We talk about, excellent. We talk about structure. We use a tool called the accountability chart to help us build the structure. It looks like an org chart. I sometimes say it's an org chart on steroids. And the difference here between an organizational chart and the accountability chart is you'll see there are 5 primary roles that will be defined for each and every one of those seats. That's really the power. This clearly identifies what the person is accountable for delivering. If you use the term ever swim lanes, or if people ever come to you and say, hey, I'm not sure who I'm supposed to go to about X, Y, or Z, this is a really clear and effective way to make sure the person knows, and the rest of the organization knows who they report to and what they're responsible for delivering. Now, we start every accountability chart with a basic foundational picture, which is the picture I'm showing you here, that has 3 primary functions that we believe every business has. There's some sort of marketing and sales function, an operations or maybe multiple operations functions, and a finance function as part of this. We also have some terms called integrator and visionary, sometimes the same person, sometimes 2 separate people. Again, part of a discussion for a separate day. In order for me to make our exercise work, sorry about the graphics, one of the things we do is customize the accountability chart to make sure it fits with your organization. In my hypothetical, I've split marketing and sales so that they are 2 separate functions. And this is the basic structure of the organization we're going to use for our exercise. So it may look something like this. When we're complete and all is done, every single team, every single person in your organization, you've built out a full accountability chart, top to bottom, that shows who reports to whom and exactly what they're accountable for delivering on a consistent basis. Any questions about the accountability chart? And I'm flying through this, but presuming whatever your current organizational chart or accountability chart looks like, let's presume that's the right structure. This is the tool we'd use to make sure you get there. All right. So on to the interesting piece of defining the right people. Right people in the right seats is a phrase popularized by Jim Collins. A lot of different ways we can talk about right people. At the core of it, right people really means great people for your unique organization. What does that specifically look like for you? So this is where we're going to start to do part of the exercise. If you've got a piece of paper, graph quickly a diagram that looks very similar to what I have here. You're going to need just 4 rows and a handful of columns. And I'll walk you through what we're going to do here. So this is the start of the People Analyzer tool. And what I'd like you to do is just, again, for this exercise to work, I'd like you to think of somebody in your organization that you consider to be a rock star. If you had 10, 15 of them, your company would be amazing. You'd be so much further along. You would love to be able to clone them or hire people just like them. Think of that person. And then think of, and I'm going to use for my example, I'm going to think of kind of 2 people that are a little challenging, maybe for different reasons, but somebody that their names come up a couple times, they're in need of some coaching or some development, somebody that you've worked through from a people standpoint. So 3 people. In my hypothetical situation, I'm going to use Kelly, Mark, and CJ. And what I would recommend if you really were going to use this today is to start with the leadership team. Start with your leadership team, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. The next thing I'm going to have you do is at the top of these columns that you've done, write down your core values. Again, this is presuming you've got core values that are true to you. And the difference that I'm trying to hit on here is different from the ones you say. If we asked everyone how people behave, how you do things, how they describe the culture day in and day out, these are the terms that they'd use to describe the culture. So the 5 that I've listed at the top here are the EOS core values. Again, in my hypothetical, please, it may or may not make sense as we get through this. I just threw these in here as examples. The reason I mentioned starting with the leadership team, if you're going to use this, later today or in the future, start with the leadership team and really assess the leadership team first, because as you've probably experienced at some point in your careers, if the leadership team isn't living the core values, assessing everyone else on those core values isn't going to work. So the way we grade these, is pretty simplistic, but makes a lot of sense. We're trying to keep things simple and not over-engineer or overthink these things. So in our grading scales we go through to grade our people. A plus simply means 80% plus, 80% or more of the time they are living these core values. Plus minus is about half the time. And then a minus is certainly less than half the time they're pretty inconsistent in living these. They might have an occasion here or there to live them, but day in, day out, they're not living the core values. And what we're then going to do is go through each of our people. So take the people that you've written down and the core values you've written down, and very quickly just sort of trust what you know about your people and go ahead and grade them on your core values. Are they living them consistently? Are they sort of hit and miss? Or are they pretty inconsistent? And this part of the tool really speaks to ensuring we've got the right people. Again, right people for your organization means that they're living and breathing your core values. They're behaving in the way that you want them to behave, that are most important to the culture of your organization, day in and day out. The next concept for this, the next step is we're going to create something we call the bar. And this will be unique to each organization. This is unique to you. And the bar is simply, what is the minimum standard that you will tolerate? You will get the behaviors that you tolerate. What is the minimum standard? So again, for the bar, go across with those core values and indicate if it's got to be 80% of the time, or if there are some that can be maybe 50% of the time. And as a general rule, if you've got 5 core values, for instance, we say 3 of them are probably pluses, maybe 2, maybe 4 are pluses, 1 or 2 are plus minus, but certainly no minuses. If there's any on there that is a minus for whatever reason, it's not truly a core value. So once we've set the bar and we know what our minimum standard is, obviously the next step is pretty straightforward. We're going to be able to quickly and easily identify potential right person issues. Again, the right person is Mark is not consistently living our core values. He's violating our culture, and that's causing all sorts of issues that are either seen or felt and unseen. So a quick visual way for us to identify, okay, Mark, we have a question with Mark from a right people standpoint. Does he really fit our culture? All right, so the next step is, if we think back for a second, we're going to use that accountability chart. We've got the structure, and we start from a structure first standpoint. We take all the names out of the structure first to have you build the right foundation for your organization for the next 12 months. Again, let's presume we've built that structure. We're going to take that structure, we're going to take all of our people, and we're now going to match and put those right people into the appropriate seats. This is where you assign the name to the accountability chart, kind of like you would in an organizational chart. So again, looking at this, we're going to start plopping all of our people now into the positions. And the way we're going to confirm that it's the right seat, we're validating the right person, right seat, is we're going to use a tool called GWC, which stands for they get it, want it, and can do it. GWCing each seat is going to confirm the match, that we've got the right people in the right seats. And there's a simple grading for this also, and it's just yes or no. We need to have 3 yeses. Gets it, as you can probably guess, means they have the aptitude, they've got the internal wiring. It's just how they're wired. They really understand the ins and outs. They've got the skills and experience to do the job well consistently. I like to use the analogy kind of in sports. This is a wide receiver that really understands how to run routes, how to catch the ball, really gets what is required of the position. Wants it, that's where we talk about that passion that people have, that they really are energized by the job. And the can do it is that they've got the intellectual, emotional, psychological makeup to do the job well consistently. We're going to add that to the people analyzer. So at the top of your columns, adding gets it, wants it, and the capacity to do it or can do it. And again, we're going to grade our folks yes or no across the board here. The bar is always 3 yeses. The one caveat to this is with the can do it or capacity, there may be a no early on in someone's career. As they first joined your organization, they may not be fully up to speed yet or on board yet. And so if they're a no temporarily, as they've either joined the team or been promoted into a new position, we're going to give them some leeway. But once they've settled, the expectation is, again, they inherently understand the role, they want it and are energized by it, and they can do it from a capacity standpoint consistently day in and day out. So once we've put that grading in, again, it allows us to visually and very quickly identify any potential right person, right seat issues. So in this case, CJ doesn't quite get the role that she's in. And in my example, I'm just going to use the 3 functional areas. Kelly is my finance manager or VP of finance. Mark is my sales, and CJ is in operations. And so what not getting it in operations could be just doesn't have attention to detail, for instance, or doesn't follow through on things, or just isn't process oriented. There's something in there that just doesn't fit with CJ. All right, so walking through, we've identified a couple things pretty quickly, a couple common right person, right seat issues that this allows us to identify. And the first one is the right person in the wrong seat. So this is CJ in this case, right? Fits the, sorry with the graphics here. CJ fits and lives our core values. She's above the bar, all pluses with 1 plus minus, but she just doesn't get the seat that she's in. And what that means, hopefully, is that there are other seats in the organization. We love CJ. She's a great fit for the organization, but the seat that she's in just doesn't work. Are there other seats or opportunities somewhere in the organization for her? If not, we have to have that hard conversation. We have to talk to CJ about this just isn't for you. I'll use an extreme football analogy. You know, this is the 6'5", 300-pound athlete that thinks they're a wide receiver. Right? Great person, living our values, really passionate about football, really working hard, very coachable, has all that physical attributes. They just are not a wide receiver. They're more suited for alignment. So that's unfortunately the first common issue we run into, right person, wrong seat. The next one is, the wrong person in the right seat. So I made Mark, my sales my VP of sales or sales manager for a reason. This is where you're often going to find this, right? This is the superstar. This is the one that's scoring lots of touchdowns, or in the sales sense, always bringing in a big book of business, but just doesn't live our core values. Is, as we'd say, sort of a cancer in the locker room or poisoning the well, doesn't work well with others, seems to be the exception, not the rule, always getting away with something. These folks will tear down your culture and your organization faster than any other people problem. So these are the ones really that we have to address very quickly. This is a wrong person. Even though they're great at their job, this is somebody we have to deal with. Using this, so I'm certainly not suggesting if you go through and use this today to rate and analyze all of your people, it doesn't mean all your people are fired today, right? That's not practical. What we suggest is it starts the conversation. It is a way for you to take the people analyzer and take this grading and sit down with them, in this case with Mark, and say, hey, Mark, we feel as a leadership team that you're not consistently living our core values of A and D. What can we do different? What can you do differently about that? What kind of development or coaching do we need? And we use something called the 3-strike rule. Simply just means we have this initial conversation. They've got 30 days to really start making marked improvement. They're still not doing it. We have another conversation in which it gets obviously progressively more serious in terms of the ramifications. And then with a 3rd strike, we're going to make a change. So any and all of the tools that we use are data to start conversations, to have those meaningful management leadership conversations that you need with people. It's not just to rule blindly by the data or the tool. So again, that's the people analyzer tool. It is, again, when the structure is right and when your core values are right, a very quick and easy way for you to go through and tackle this people component. Now, all 6 of the components in the wheel are very important, but this people component, again, continues to be the number 1 component, and especially with the leadership team. Between the accountability chart, the people analyzer, using the core values, and the get it, want it, can do it are proven tools to help you, again, very quickly ensure that you've got the right people in the right seats. And the goal is essentially to have 100% right people in the right seats, especially the leadership team. One of Gino Wickman's kind of aha moments after 20 plus years and tens of thousands of clients that he's interacted with is that the health and strength of the leadership team is far and away the number 1 component, number 1 factor in sustained long-term success of any organization. If you don't have the right people in the right seats at the leadership team level, everything else is exponentially more difficult. So getting this right, especially on the leadership team, should be first and foremost in importance. And then this is something you can repeat annually. You can repeat often. I'm going to go through a couple practical applications of this here in a second, but using this tool at least annually continues to ensure that you've got right people in the right seats. So how do we use these tools in a practical sense? Much like with our core values, these can be used for hiring, firing, reviewing, rewarding, and recognizing our folks. So one of the very first practical ways, with a complete accountability chart and this people analyzer, knowing what the core values are and what get it, wants it, can do it looks like, you can craft a really powerful job description to ensure you're attracting right people right from the get. So again, when you think about that, we've got the 5 primary roles of the seat defined. You know what your core values are. You know what the bar is on your people analyzer. Use those as input in the job description to write something really compelling so that it speaks to the type of person who's going to succeed. You can also use these in interviews. Obviously, it's great information between the core values and what get it, wants it, and can do it looks like. You can turn those that data into great behavioral interview questions. So with each one of those core values, asking some type of question like, tell me about a time when you sacrificed your own personal gain for the greater good of the company or the team. Really powerful way to ask questions and ensure, again, you're attracting the right people and you're repelling the wrong people. Performance reviews. Again, this is a quick and easy way, something you can do quarterly or annually, but it gives you a high-level way to sit down and have this conversation, a meaningful conversation with people in the organization about, are they living your core values? Do they truly get it, want it, and can do the seat that they're in? It's great from a performance review standpoint, as well as a professional development standpoint, to really think about how we want to develop the person moving forward. So take, for instance, somebody wants a promotion. You can see on the accountability chart one step up, and you know what get it, want it, can do it looks like there. You can start to have that conversation with that person about, here are the primary roles. Here's what's going to be required of you from a skills standpoint. How do we develop you so that that role is something that you're going to get, want, and can do in the future? So great from a performance review, again. And then finally, from an incentive plan. I've actually had clients who tie their performance incentive, annual performance or quarterly performance, to a people analyzer review and the percent and the number of pluses they get with regard to core values. Now, again, those core values are what's driving that culture. A lot of people you've heard, I'm sure, culture trumps strategy all day long. It starts with who, then what, all of the people things first. Tying an incentive plan and saying, we're really serious about these core values. Each plus earns you some percentage point. I've had clients do that pretty effectively with the people analyzer. Again, a quick and easy way to go through that. One last thing on the people analyzer, that's something that you will do as a leadership team, that we would suggest you do as a leadership team, that each person grades their entire team. Actually, everybody grades everybody in the organization and then compares notes to really come up with a holistic, almost like 360-degree feedback for a person, so that you've got multiple input. You can always just do it yourself if that's how you want to do it, running the organization, but getting the leadership team to weigh in and really have discussions about how you're rating your people on the people analyzer leads to great information. I mentioned I was going to challenge you. So yeah, this is hopefully, there's a lot in the people analyzer. There is the big caveat with regard to the structure and you clearly understanding the roles and your values and truly having those. But this is a tool that you can use today to just jot down your people. So even if it's just a thought exercise, I challenge you to take out a piece of paper and do it with your team, do it with the whole organization. Just write down your people and go through and quickly see what comes out, what insights or takeaways you have from using the people analyzer today. Start with your leadership team, as I mentioned, so that you confirm that those core values, if your leadership team isn't consistently living those core values, that probably raises a different question. Are these really our core values? How would you rate yourself? Are these really the values and the behaviors that we want focused on day in and day out? If you go through that, it's a quick and powerful way to immediately get some feedback and have some insights. I encourage you to start having those conversations. It's a new way to discuss it with people, perhaps, but sitting down to talk about and show them the results of the people analyzer with them to start having a conversation is a great way to help them start developing and succeeding in the way that you want. And as an implementer, one of our ongoing rocks, so every 90 days we set new rocks, we are going to push you to address at least one right person, right seat issue every quarter. We know that changing sort of the team makeup is difficult. It's not something you can go out tomorrow and anybody that's an issue let go and still operate. But once a quarter, it should be a priority to continually make progress either with some behavioral change, conversations in the 3-strike rule. And what we find there is oftentimes after a couple strikes, most people sort of self-select and will start to move out of the organization. But challenge you to address one right person, right seat issue each and every quarter. We flew through that. Hopefully that was useful. What questions do you have?
Hello, my name's Anna Marie Ferniak. I'm the CEO of a company called Mind Body Align. I just want to thank you so much. This has actually been very helpful. We're looking at EOS. My whole leadership team just read Traction. So we're analyzing what implementing EOS into our company could be like. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, good to connect, Anna Marie. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I'm going to have to excuse myself. I've got another meeting, actually a face-to-face one that I have to lead. So
okay.
I'm sorry to have missed the rest of it, but it's been very helpful. I don't have a small business. I'm retired, but I sit on a bunch of boards of organizations, and inevitably the issue that is always on the forefront is staffing. And
sure.
that's why I was interested in this, the concept of having the right people in the right spot. And
yep.
So this helps, it gives a nice framework. I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And again, thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Yeah. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go to a thing called a food forum, not a food fight, but in the retirement community where we live with retired folks, food is a very important issue. And so we have to meet with the chef and the staff. And in retirement communities, particularly in post-COVID, staffing has been absolutely critical and very difficult. And here comes my wife to remind me we've got to go. So,
excellent.
Okay.
Good luck with that. Yeah, thank you for attending.
Yeah.
Food is very important for me as well.
Absolutely.
Not like everybody else. I will say, that the organizations that do a great job with their people and are deliberate with their core values and the communication and conversations that these tools can have a better track record in retaining people. You're having proactive conversations with them. You're giving them real feedback. You're ensuring that it's a culture in which they truly fit. That does more for retention, I think, than foosball tables, happy hours, any kind of perks or anything else that's going on. That's going to do more, I think, when people feel like they are truly seen and heard for who they are, and it's a great fit with the culture. That goes a long way toward solving that retention problem.
I actually had a question for you, Ryan.
Yeah, great.
So you were talking earlier about, the marketers that post all the core values around the office. Well, that's me. And looking at my core values, they're very, I don't want to say surface level. I didn't know, do you have criteria of finding those true core values? Because I think ours could use fine tuning just to really, narrow in on it.
Yeah, I'll give you the high level and we can follow up one-on-one after this, but information for everybody. The core values discovery exercise that we teach, I believe is in Traction also, really has, as a team, has you sit down to think about people that are really just superstars in the organization, that really fit the organization. And then how would you describe them? What adjectives would you use to describe that person? And you put all of those on the board. So if there's the leadership team of 5 or 6, 7 people, have all of them think about the people, identify the people that they think are really stars, find the 2 or 3 people that everyone agrees on. So there's going to be one person or 3 people that everybody says, oh yeah, Susie's great and Tom is great. what is it about Susie and Tom that makes them great in our organization?
Mhm.
Right? And you're going to start using words like they're client focused, they're creative problem solvers, they always follow through and do what they say, and start working through those to see which of those values, as you're kind of continuing to refine the list and start eliminating things and combine things. Through that process, you come up with about 5 qualities or attributes that are more likely to be your true core values than something you sit down and kind of create in a marketing or a off-site type of way.
Yeah.
Again, we would say the core values are how we behave day in and day out and how we live and what are the most important ones. So for Whalen, for instance, integrity, confidentiality, something around those lines, given what you do, is incredibly important. Attention to detail, being very organized, being able to juggle multiple things at once. These things become very important to succeed and do well at Whalen.
Mm-hmm.
So again, looking at your organization, looking at the best people and how you describe them, that's the quick and easy way to, I think, discover true core values.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, good question. So I'm interested of the issues that you wrote down. A couple of them were people related.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just an informal poll within either the accountability chart. We focused on the people analyzer, the concepts of using the core values, get it, want it, can do it, or 3 strikes rule, or any of those tools potentially going to help you solve some of the challenges that you wrote down at the beginning. Yeah. Great. Fantastic.
I think to get it, want it, can do it will be very helpful. Especially when creating job descriptions, that's also something that I help out in doing. And a lot of times we look at other companies' examples, then, kind of craft into our own. And, having those criteria, I think, will help just really find the people we're wanting.
Yeah. I think the degree, we've all probably seen, we've all probably used, just because it's probably what's most common, the job description that has 12,000 characteristics and skills and requirements on it, right? It's the wish list. Let's just throw everything on there. And I think right now, as the challenge to find great people is so difficult, crafting a job description that can really speak to the person. So write a job description and then take it to one of those people that you identified as one of your best people and read it to them and see if they react emotionally. See if they say, wow, I'd love to work at that place. Where is that place? Like, hopefully they don't say that to you, but I'd love to work there. Or it really speaks to them, because if you can connect to and speak to somebody and help them envision what working there looks like and the fact that I could succeed there, that's really going to help the job description stand out. And it's really going to help spark some interest in me to follow up with it versus just, can you check all these boxes?
Gotcha. Anyone else have some questions? I know Tanya's working through EOS right now, so I feel like there has to be some there.
Well, I'm actually pretty happy with where we're at. I'll tell you one thing that really stuck out to me. We just implemented the people analyzer last quarter.
Right.
We went through and put our core values at the top and everybody down the side, and we rated everybody. I love that you, first of all, said, like, fix one of those a quarter. Because we were like, oh my gosh, we've got 2 people. We need to do something with them right now.
Yep.
So just being able to give ourselves some grace and say, okay, we can do this. Let's just have a goal of 1 a quarter. We'll just fix these one time, one a quarter. Anyways, but this is back, and I hope it's okay if I go backwards, but
Sure.
The processes. So when you said capturing 20% that leads to 80% of the business,
Yep.
Looking back on what we've been doing, we have been doing, we're documenting 80% of our processes.
Yep.
That's why it's taking forever.
But it's taking forever. Yeah.
We totally misread that, misunderstood it. That's why it's taking us so long.
Yeah.
So just that one sentence,
And
just
the way that
capturing the 20% that leads to 80%
so,
is going to help.
Yeah, there's a great quote that I like to use, which is systemize the predictable and humanize the exceptional. And it kind of goes into those processes. It's the 20% of the steps that lead to 80% of the outcome. Checklist, if you think of it as bullet points or checklists, that's usually a really great place to start to get you thinking in that framework versus each and every minute step. So think of it very high level checklists, and with great people, you're training and developing them. They know how to. So for instance, let's take Jacob's example of writing job descriptions, our HR process that we're documenting, right? Step one is there's a need for somebody. So step two is Jacob's going to write a job description. Step three, we're going to post the job description. Step four, we're interviewing. Steps 1, 2, 3 are, the next couple of steps are interviews. Step 5, we have a debrief session. Step 6, we onboard them. And training and teaching great people how to do that. I don't need to sit down and tell Jacob exactly what to do with the job description. And that's the micromanage, is telling them how to do it. We just need to make sure we're following our proven core process for how we do HR and onboard people when we need them. Trying to capture every single detail leads to those unwieldy 100-page SOP manuals that no one ever looks at. So if it's one pager, I'll use it.
Right. So do you recommend that we have the SOPs somewhere? Like, because we've kind of been saying, okay, we're going to do these high level checklists, if you will.
Yep.
And then eventually we're going to get an SOP for each one of those checklists.
That's depending on your organization. So Tanya, what's your organization do?
We do promotional products and corporate apparel for large companies, companies that have $100,000 a year to spend. Yep.
Fantastic. So if there's a step in part of one of your processes that is absolutely critical to quality output, I'm thinking surgery, engineering, nuclear physicists, right? There's probably some process that has to be detailed and documented to the nth degree so that because there's zero room for error. So there may be part of one of your processes. Let's do fulfilling a customer order. Step 1, take the order. Okay, look at that one. And does that step require its own sort of documented checklist? No, everybody knows how to take an order. The system's pretty self-explanatory. We don't need to do that. But step 3 is customize the order to their particular things, or get the sizing and dimensions right. That one might be so detailed and so critical to the process that if you dive in and have a supplemental checklist or kind of an SOP for that component, that step, that makes a lot of sense. Doing it for each and every one of them, when most of them, after you've trained me once or twice, are pretty self-explanatory and I can largely succeed, I would say is overkill. If there is one that is absolutely crucial, then creating a separate checklist, I think, makes some sense.
So we're not like taking these checklists and handing them to a new employee to train them. This is more of an after you've been onboarded, after you've been with the company 90 days, then you should be able to follow these checklists.
Okay. And if that's working, fantastic. I might
No, that was a question. That was a question. I'm sorry.
I'd say use for both, right?
Okay.
What you're documenting is the right and best way to do something each and every time.
Okay.
Here's the process you go through.
Okay.
As if I'm onboarded today and you're going through a particular, the order fulfillment process or customer order process, whatever it may be, some operational process with me, I've got this checklist, and step one is take the order. Well, as a brand newbie, I have no idea how to do that. So you're going to teach me, and I'm going to take my own notes. I'm going to write it in a way that makes sense to me so I learn it. But I know that step one is take the order. And I'm going to take the order as the first step each and every time. I have my notes, and I've been trained and onboarded. When I've been here for 10 years, I still know this is the same process I go through each and every time. Step one is always take the order. Step two is confirm the order. Step three is talk to the designer. Step four is whatever it may be. I still have that and still do that exact process each and every time.
Got it. That was one of the hardest things about this, was taking a high level look, like starting out and because especially our accounting manager, she was like, well, we do this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, AR, AP. I don't care what steps you need to do those. Those are the tasks. I can't remember what they're called. So that was really difficult.
Right.
To just look at it high level.
What we tend to do with the processes is we're trying to idiot proof it, right? So that there's never a mistake.
Right.
And there are always going to be mistakes. There's no way you can write a document that is 100% idiot proof that somebody isn't going to make a mistake. So it really comes back to the people component, which is, do we have the right people in the right seats? Somebody that's really detailed oriented understands what entering proper GL entries or processing payroll looks like. I got to know the system. I got to know the steps, but you don't have to micromanage and document everything. If I understand the seat, if I really get it, and that's how I'm wired, you don't need to do that for me. Right? Okay. If you take me and you put me in finance, Jacob, if you tried to hire me as an auditor and you put me in, you have to document each and every little step because I have no idea. That's not how I'm wired. That's not what I do.
Oh, they've tried to get me to the dark side and I refused because I'm not geared that way.
Right. Tanya, does that help?
It does. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. All right. I want to be respectful of time, but if there are any other questions, I'll hopefully we got through the objectives a little differently about your people, some practical tools, take some action. And then if there's any follow-up, if there are any questions, if you want to talk about additional tools, if you've got more questions about process or any of the other components we talked about, feel free to reach out to me. My email is there at the bottom, and I'm happy to connect and offer any assistance that I can.
Also, if anyone needs a refresher on anything, I will be publishing and sending out the PowerPoint and the video recording from today's session.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks.
Bye.